have agreements. And it could really be settled instead of just expecting things that happen or are supposed to happen, because we all have our own ideas of what we should get from a relationship, what we should give in a relationship, how a relationship should go. But it doesn't mean that the other person or people involved in the relationship see things the same way. They may not expect the same things. So it's always a good idea, instead of having expectations, to avoid all that conflict, is really to have agreements. And the only difference is that an expectation is based on one person's point of view, one person's perspective about a relationship, how a relationship's supposed to go, right? And an agreement, though, is when everybody in the relationship has the same, basically the same expectations, because it's agreed upon, right? So it's not one person's idea, not one person's wants and needs, not all about that, but it's about like everybody in the relationship, whether it's one person or more people in the relationship. So agreements are kind of the things to help keep the whole expectation, frustration, anger, and kind of all that leads into this stuff from happening. Hopefully that makes sense, all right? The other thing, communication, right? The big C. We all know about communication. It's talked about. Every freaking relationship expert out there talks about the importance of communication. We got to communicate more. I've talked with couples who tell me the same thing, like, we need to communicate more. How do we communicate more? And I've always said it, and I'll say it again, that it's not that we don't communicate. Everybody communicates. And most of our communication, here's the thing, most of our communication is nonverbal. So even if you're sitting in a room with your significant other or your kids or whatever, and you're sitting on your cell phone, and you're checking your Facebook, and you're checking your Instagram, and you're watching TV, and you're not talking to anyone, that is communicating. You're still communicating. But what you're communicating, it's very different than, if you were to sit down and be present and talk and enjoy your time with your significant other, your kids, or whoever it is, right? So we're always communicating. So here's the big problem with communication. It's not that we don't communicate, it's how we communicate. How are we really communicating, and are you aware of it, right? Are you aware of how you're communicating? Body language, expressions, demeanor, breathing, right? Presence or lack of. Those are all important, right? And are you aware of what you're communicating? Because what you might think you're communicating to somebody else might be completely different from what they are perceiving, what they're getting from you. Understand? So hopefully that makes sense. But communication is not about needing to communicate more, but how we're communicating.